What's up guys, it's Fahad and I'm back with my series on the JET program and the whole application process, and now I'm going to talk about the application itself. So there's basically two parts to the application. There's the written portion that you have to mail in, and then there's the online portion. Now depending on your consulate, where you are, the deadlines may be different. I know that most universities get a representative that comes down there to talk about it and give you guys information. So it might be a little relative. I honestly think it might just be around the same time too. But the thing is, and what stays the same, is that they're very, very strict on this whole process. So like when they have a deadline or they have an instruction, you have to make sure that you follow that like to the T, or they'll just throw your application away. And it doesn't matter how good of an applicant you are. It doesn't matter you know, what your qualifications are. But for them, honestly, I feel like the whole application process itself is like a way to filter out and weed out applicants. So you got to be really, really careful about following instructions exactly as they're written. And if you have any questions, email them or call them. Make sure you ask, because the application process is once a year, guys, and the last thing you want to do is just mess something up and then be out of luck for like the next year. Honestly, as soon as the application comes out, I would probably get started on it just to make sure you know, you got everything done in time. You can have your teachers or your peers review it and stuff like that. Make sure everything's on point. So as far as the written application goes, it's basically just filling out the fields that are in there, right? So I mean, you have to submit your letters of recommendation with it. You have to submit your statement of purpose, and I know that they have like one original and, you know, 2 photocopies. You gotta have your passport in there, a copy of your passport or something, to basically proof of citizenship in the United States. I submitted a copy of my passport. You can also, I believe, submit a copy of your birth certificate. Now you also have to have your transcripts, and if you have graduated already, it'll say on your transcript most likely that you know, you graduated in this semester this year. If you haven't, then you also have to submit proof of graduation, because you do have to be a 4-year degree graduate to get into the JET program, right? And if you're applying before you've actually graduated, you need to make sure you submit that proof of graduation. I actually know somebody that didn't submit it and their application was basically disqualified. So you got to be really, really careful, like I said, about following these instructions. As far as the written application part goes, you have a bunch of fields basically about yourself, you know, basic information like your name, your mailing address, and all that stuff. Another part is going to be where you actually want to be placed. Now, a lot of people, when you talk to them, when you read online, they'll say, oh, don't put Tokyo, don't put Kyoto, because that's what everybody puts. I say put it. I mean, that's exactly what I did. I put in Kyoto Prefecture is my #1 choice, Osaka Prefecture is my #2 choice, and Hyogo Prefecture is my #3 choice. All 3 of these places are in the Kansai region, or Kinki as it'll be on the application, and because that's what I wanted. And I got lucky and actually got Kyoto City, not just Kyoto Prefecture, for my placement. So you never know what can happen. As far as Tokyo goes, as from this year, I know they opened up like 100 more spots for jets to come in. So this year, for the first time, a bunch of jets are actually placed in Kyoto City, and I believe that's in preparation for like the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. But you know, so that's another very possible option for you. So don't just put in what you actually want, because that way they at least know that you're going to be that this is what you're interested in. They'll try their best to kind of work around that. So if you have a specific place in mind, I would put that place as well as places around it, so you can at least possibly get near that area. Another thing to consider is during my since I put all 3 Kansai regions, they called me out on that on my interview, and they asked me, why do you want to go to Kansai so bad? And I told them, you know, it's the people, it's the dialect, everything about it is just something that resonates with me, and they loved it, and that's exactly what I got. So basically, make sure you put what you want to put. I mean, you can follow the instructions, or it's not even instructions, it's advice on don't put Tokyo because everybody puts Tokyo. I say do whatever you want to do. Put in what you feel, places that you feel like you want to go, so you can at least have a shot at getting those places, right? Another part of the application is going to be Japanese related classes that you took, right? So Japanese language, culture, whatever. And I know I talked about a lot, especially in the last video, about volunteering and conversation and how significant that is. But honestly, guys, classes themselves is an actual proof that they have on your transcript, right? So, you know, this guy took this class and he got this grade in it. So it's an actual gauge of your effort in school itself, your degree, to how much you put into the language and culture, and what the results yielded, right? So it's pretty important, especially if you're not applying this year, if you're thinking of applying, to take some classes that are relevant to Japanese language or culture. Now, for me, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background on myself real quick. I had no plan on taking Japanese, right? I majored in biology and chemistry for my undergrad. There was no way that I was even considering Japanese. But my last semester as an undergrad student, I needed only 8 credit hours to graduate. But I had scholarships that basically required me to be a full-time student, which is 12 credit hours. And Japanese happened to be one of the classes that was 4 hours, and I was like, why not? I think that'll be a cool college experience, right? Turns out it was one of the most significant decisions I ever made for my entire life, right? So that's how, it's funny how life works. And basically, I took it for a few semesters, and then I started auditing it. Now, that means I'm not actually enrolled in the class, right? I just have special permission to sit in on the classes, and I put that on my application. So if you aren't majoring in Japanese and you don't have the money to basically enroll in those classes, or whatever the reason may be, try auditing the classes. It's tough because you got to work your schedule around it, but it's a really affordable way to get the experience without putting the money up front. You're not going to get the grade for it on your transcript, but it still shows, as far as the JET program is concerned, it still shows that you have an interest in it. And I audited like multiple semesters of Japanese, right? And another part of the online application is going to be the personal information part, your personal achievements, your awards, your volunteer experience, all that stuff. Here's where that stuff comes in about volunteering, doing language exchange with Japanese people, going to events and stuff like that, being an officer in some sort of Japanese-related group or society. So these things, it's like that extra pin you put on your application that kind of further sets you apart from everybody else, right? Because in your university, if you have a Japanese club, it's one thing to be a member, it's a whole nother ballgame to be an officer, right? So that kind of sets you apart from the tens or hundreds that may be members of the small group that's an actual officer that plans, that organizes, that leads. So those are things that you can put into leadership, in their leadership roles, and Japanese-related, extracurricular activity roles. So these are all very, very important, and they do make a pretty significant difference on your application. Another thing to mention, guys, is on the part where you put in your placements, you basically have 3 prefectures and a specific city that you can put. And so basically, if you put in 2 regions, like we talked about the Kansai region, right? On the application, it's the official way to say it is Kinki. So if you put 2 of the same regions, right? So I put Kyoto and Osaka, both are in the Kinki region. There'll be like a little thing there that says, hey, if you put 2 of the same regions, please try and put a different region for your 3rd choice. And I totally did not follow that instruction because there was no other option but Kansai. So I put Hyogo for the 3rd option. And it's, again, I'm here, I'm in the JET program, so that means that it's not a concrete rule. It's like a suggestion, but that doesn't mean that you have to follow it. So if you really, really want to go somewhere, guys, you can work the application however you want to. I mean, as long as you don't break any rules, you'll be fine. And if you have questions, email people, call people, email me, comment me. I'll be more than happy to help you guys out to kind of make that happen. As far as the online application goes, that's the main part. Now, what's interesting is you're going to basically submit that application and then print out multiple copies of that online application to be part of your written packet application. Now, you're going to have to print out, I believe, 3 copies of the online form that you filled out. This is after you've submitted it, so make sure you've submitted it, and you print out 3 of those copies and put it into the big envelope that you're going to mail off to your consulate. As far as the envelope goes, you have the 2 letters of reference. Now make sure you get these from somebody that knows you, that can write a detailed story about you, and knows your characteristics and can connect them to why you'd make a good applicant into the JET program, right? I actually happen to have a really good relationship with my Japanese teachers. One of them was the one that taught me from intermediate Japanese onwards. The other one was a lady who taught me for the first year. And I mentioned in my first video, my university had a department called the East Asia Institute. So I volunteered with this lady after being taught by her for 1 year. So both of them knew me very, very well. Both of them knew me for several years, and they could write my application and basically portray me in a way that basically really sets me apart, or set me apart from other applicants, and that's really, really important. So make sure, I mentioned in the first one, build that rapport with your school, build a rapport with the teachers in your university, with the Japanese community in your city, because it's a really significant factor in putting you above the rest of the group. I mean, think about it. If you got a letter that says something like, this person is a good student, he always did his work, blah, 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 blah. I mean, that's, who cares, right? That's stupid. But if somebody puts, this is one of the best students I've ever had, he's always made such a great effort to do blah, 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 and they actually put emotion into their letters of recommendation, that makes such a huge difference. So make sure that you have that, you get a letter from somebody that knows you like that. And if they are, it's really recommended to get people that are, that have some sort of relation to Japanese in general, not just a language but culture. So make sure you try and find somebody like that to kind of bolster your application. So that's going to be the part of the packet that you mail into them. And again, it's going to be like 3 copies of each letter and a bunch of random stuff. So make sure you're following those instructions, guys. It's so, so important. Finally, another very, very big part of your application is your statement of purpose, right? Your own personal statement. Now, these are your words. You have 2 pages to tell your story and to show them why you're interested in the JET program, why you feel like you'd be a good fit for it, why you want to go to Japan, what is your story, who are you, and why do you want to go to Japan? That's what you have to basically tell. Now, as far as my personal statement goes, I kind of put a dramatic touch to it. It was all completely true, but I really painted a picture, and I think that's important because, I mean, think about it. They're reading thousands of applications, right? If they just read another, 2 pages of just facts about a person, they don't care about that. So you have to make a story, make it interesting to where the person that's reading it actually looks at it and goes, wow, this is actually pretty nice, and they put it in that separate pile, right? You're not just in that junk pile, you're in the pile that's being reconsidered. So make sure you write a statement of purpose like that. And if you're a university student right now, you have so many resources in your university that you can take advantage of. You probably have some sort of tutoring program. You have English professors that you definitely have to take for like a prereqs or whatever. You have writing centers. You have so many people that can proofread, help you create a good 2-page essay about who you are. And make sure when you're done creating it, have people proofread it so they can say, oh, this is kind of unclear to me, or I would probably word it that way. If you get multiple opinions, you get multiple point of views, you have a better idea of how somebody that's grading your paper might take a look at it. And just to give you an example of what I put on my personal statement, I basically told my story, right? I was a biology and chemistry major. I had no intention of taking any sort of Japanese classes, and by a random chance, I started, and it just became one of the most significant moments of my life. That's literally how I, started it off, and then I just told a story. And it's kind of interesting, and to kind of give you an idea of what I meant by dramatic, I talked about how I walked into my first Japanese class and sat down. My teacher basically looked at all of us, put a paragraph in hiragana on the projector, and she just goes, "Do you guys see this? I'm pretty sure none of you guys can read this right now, but I guarantee you in 6 weeks you will be able to read it." And I was just like, that's insane. I'm not going to do that. That's impossible, right? But sure enough, 6 weeks later, guys, I was reading it, and that happened to be one of the most inspiring moments for myself. It showed me like, hey, it's a completely different writing style. It's a completely different language, but in 6 weeks, I'm actually reading it. Like, that's insane. And so that really inspired me to continue going and led me on to meet all those exchange students, do all those volunteer events. And then I kind of branched out from that moment to the rest of my essay, and it turns out that they really liked it. So make sure you're painting a picture. You want to make it interesting because you don't want them to skim, the first couple of paragraphs and be like, this is not what we're looking for, and just toss it in that junk pile. You want to be in that separate pile. So make sure you're writing your essays like that. So finally, we basically have like all the main components of the mail-in application. We've already at this point submitted the online application. This is where you want to double, triple check every single thing. I think they have like a checklist document on there, so you can really, it kind of helps keep track. You got to have those 3 copies of everything. You got to have your transcripts, your proof of graduation, your proof of citizenship, your essays, your letters of recommendation. All that stuff needs to be ready to go. And then once you're double, triple, quadruple sure that you've got everything, mail that thing off. And you're gonna, once you mail it off and they receive it, you're eventually gonna get a little confirmation letter. Oh, speaking of that, you also have to put in a pre-stamped empty envelope with postmark to yourself. And that's what they're actually going to mail in your application number back to you in. So it's kind of weird. You actually have to stamp it, address the letter as if it was coming to you, and then put it in the whole packet. Because, like I said, once they process your application, you're going to actually get that strip and it'll have your application ID. And that's very important because once the result comes out, they don't post names or anything like that. They just have this giant PDF document with all the JET application numbers that got accepted. And if your number is not on there, you didn't get through the application stage. So that's very, very important that you do that. So that's going to be basically the complete application. And once you mail it off, I would probably mail it off with tracking insurance, so just to make sure. I mean, these aren't things that you have to do, guys, but it's just for that extra peace of mind, right? It might cost a little bit more, but it lets you know, like, oh, you know, it got there or whatever. So it's really, really important, for me at least, to kind of go that extra mile to make sure everything is going well. So once you've got everything in, basically the next part is just waiting. And this is probably the most difficult part because at this point, they have no idea who you are, right? To them, you're just ID number, blah, 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 blah. You're just this manila envelope that they have in their hand. And from that, they judge whether or not they want to see who you are in person. So that, for me, that was the most, nerve-wracking moment, with a month and a half to 2 months that I had to wait to find out whether or not I got in. When I finally got it, it was one of those things where your heart sinks and you're just like, you go insanely happy. My story is actually kind of funny because, when I was looking at the PDF document, I looked at it and I confirmed what my number was, and I looked at it and I was like, oh my god, like I'm in. And then I kind of just looked up and I was like, thank god I'm in. But then I looked down and I had this momentary brain fart dyslexia thing where the numbers, I looked at them like backwards and I'm like, oh shit, I didn't get in, what the fuck? But then I was like, I had that moment of like, oh man, like this sucks, and I couldn't believe it. I looked at it again, and I was like, oh wait, I got in. So it was like this weird emotional roller coaster that I had. But yeah, you're gonna get that PDF document. You're gonna eventually you're gonna get in your email, and you have to specify in the online application what your primary email is. You'll get that email. You'll check the document out. If it's there, great, you got in. You're on to the interview portion. I'm actually gonna talk about that in a separate video. But yeah, so that's basically the whole application process. Make sure you're thorough. Make sure you follow those instructions. Make sure you double, triple, quadruple check everything, because you don't want to be that guy that didn't get in, not because you weren't qualified, but because you made a stupid mistake on your application. And if you follow those steps, guys, and if you're an applicant that they want to see, you'll be on to the next step, which is the actual interview process. So, and that's a whole nother ball game. So like I said, I'll talk about that in another video. If you guys have any comments or questions about the application itself, about any questions about advice that you may need, just let me know. Post in the comments. Email me at fahadinjapan@gmail.com. I'd be more than happy to respond to you guys. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Until the next video, guys, I'll see y'all later.